Hi, everyone. All right, let's practice some math Sunday evening because why not? Welcome to Math Easy. And I have a slide here which we will be practicing today. I'm also open to some questions here, some doubts. If you have a specific doubt, please let me know. You want to work on a specific concept. All right, so let's get to first all the graphing questions. Before I get to the graphing questions, I will just like to rebrief the concept here. So let's see, what do we have here? Can I change the slide to the empty slide? All right, so let's brief the concepts. I can do the graphing question by two different ways. I have a vertex formula, and then I have the vertex form, I have the vertex form, and then I have the standard form. And what are we talking about here? In today's live stream, we are discussing everything about the quadratic equations. In the vertex form, you see your quadratic equation written like this: a times x minus h squared plus k. And in the standard form, the quadratic equation is written as y equals to ax squared plus bx plus c. Now, what do? The first step is to always find your vertex coordinates. So you will always find the coordinate of your vertex, and we call them h and k. In the vertex form, you can find those coordinates pretty easily. So you just compare your equation with the standard form, and then you go ahead and find the coordinates of your vertex, which would be h and k. And we make a table, we create a table, and then we put our vertex coordinates in the middle of the table, and we choose the neighbors. In the standard form, we find out the vertex by using the vertex formula, x equals to negative b over 2a. And once we find out the value of x, to find the value of y, you use this value. So it's also written as, the coordinates are also written as, x would be negative b over 2a, and your y would be the function of negative 2b over 2a. So in layman terms, you will just take the value of x, put it in the value of y, and just be done with this. All right, so let's do some questions on this. My first question here for graphing is y equals to x squared minus 4. So my first question is y equals to x squared minus 4. And I'm going to compare this with the vertex form, y equals to a x minus h squared plus k. Now, what's your h here? So y equals to, I don't see anything being subtracted from x inside of the parentheses. So I can rewrite this as x minus 0 squared minus 4, which gives me the value of h and k as 0 and negative 4. Once you have the value of your h and k, you will create a table, and then you will write those values in the middle of your table. So I'm just going to write 0 and negative 4 in the middle of my table. Now go ahead and choose the neighbors. So I'm going to choose a left neighbor and a right neighbor. In the exam, you will not have enough time. So just go ahead, choose those two values, and then go ahead and input those values in the given equation. So for x equals to negative 1, we will get y equals to 1 minus 4, or simply negative 3. And then for x equals to positive 1 also, you will get y equals to negative 3. Now, this is where it becomes very important to check your outputs, because vertex is the only unique point. All the points that are left and right to the vertex should reflect in the output. Before you start graphing, also make sure you know the value of A. What is the value of A here? So A is 1. Of A is greater than 0, then your graph opens up. Now I have enough information. I will go ahead and first point my vertex, which is 0, -4. And then you'll go ahead, choose the neighbor, -1, and mark the output. Choose the neighbor and mark the output. Now it's not very clear here. It's a very small graph. Let me try to zoom in for you. But this is how it'll look like. All right. So the steps are, you will go ahead, find the value of H and K, plug it in the middle of the table, and then you will go ahead and find the neighbors, put those neighbors, so the neighbors of the inputs, and you will use that input to find the output. All right. So that was when we have to graph something using a vertex form. I could compare this equation with the vertex form. Let's see if I have something in the standard form. What happens if I have something in the standard form? My next question is y equals to -x squared plus 2x minus 1. So we have y equals to -x squared plus 2x minus 1. A way to distinguish between vertex form and standard form is you will often see in vertex form, they are written as x minus h squared plus k, and b value is always missing. Now you can find this b value once you calculate the vertex form a little bit more. But in the standard form, you see all three terms of the quadratic trinomial. So you see ax squared, bx plus c. Now, if I have been asked to compare this equation with the above two forms, I can very confidently say that the given equation looks very much like standard form. Now, how do we solve this when the equation is in the standard form? The process after finding the coordinate of the vertex is exactly the same. The only difference is how do you find the coordinates of the vertex? So if your equation is in the standard form, y equals to -x squared plus 2x minus 1, then you will start by finding the axis of symmetry. All right, let me take few questions before I answer some more questions. So let's see, I have a question. I need help with finding the dimensions of each figure. I'm not sure what does the dimension in this case mean. If you can please clear this question. What is H and K again? All right, so H and K, what is H and K again? H is the x coordinate of your vertex and K is the y coordinate of your vertex. So when you draw a graph, when you draw a quadratic equations graph, which is a parabola, you will see that the graph takes a dip. Either it takes a dip. So you can see in this graph, it is taking a dip. Or if it opens up, then it reaches to a maximum, which is the peak. At this point, at this dip, you will find some values of x and y, because each and every graph has a values of x and y. In the case of a parabola, when it takes a dip, those values are called as the vertex coordinates. So this is a vertex, and the coordinate of vertex are x and y, but also written as h and k. So h is the coordinate of the x coordinate of your vertex. Let me write this down. H is the x coordinate of the vertex, and k is the y coordinate of the vertex. So the minimum is h and k, and the maximum is also h and k. Now, h and k is not really important. It is just a way to differentiate between variables, because remember, we are using a lot of h's and a lot of k's. So how do we differentiate? If I write another x or another y in this place, it will be very confusing. So in the vertex form, you just mention it as h and k. When the graph opens upside down, then your h and k is at the peak. When the graph opens up, your h and k is at the dip. All right. In the exam, do we need to label the axis of symmetry and minimum and maximum points? No, you do not have to do that. It's not really required. You don't have to mention the maximum and minimum point or the axis of symmetry. All you are required to do is just find the coordinates of vertex. So you find the vertex. That's your first step. The second step is you put that vertex in the middle of the table. You use vertex coordinates in the center of the table, and then you choose the neighbor input points, and then you find few points and then you graph it. You do not have to specifically mark anything in this case. So when you have a standard form such as this, how do you find the coordinates of vertex? For the standard form, you will first find the x value, which is negative b over 2a. If the exam says to find the intercepts, you can ignore it and you can just go ahead and do what we are doing right now. Draw the table and draw your graph. Finding the intercepts are not required. Now, what is the b value here? The b value is always the coefficient of x. In this case, the b value is positive 2. So we will get negative 2 over 2 times, what is a? A is the coefficient of x squared. And when you don't see a number, it is negative 1. When there is none, there is 1. So the x coordinate of your vertex is, in this case, is 1. And how do I find the y coordinate? To find the y coordinate, I will take this value and I will use it in the given equation. 2 times 1 minus 1, which will give me y equals to negative 1 plus 2 minus 1, which will give you 1 minus 1 or 0. So how do you know which formula to use for specific graphing question? You have to compare it with the forms. So the vertex form will look like a times x minus h squared plus k. So your questions will look like y equals to 2x squared or y equals to x squared minus 4. You will see that the b component would be missing. But if you have the standard form, you will see a b component there, the coefficient of x. So those equations will look like 2x squared plus 4x plus 6, or y equals to 3x squared minus 2x minus 4. something like that. Can you just substitute numbers in for x and find out y instead of doing the vertex form? I will advise against it because how do you know which numbers to choose? Your graph always is, it starts from the vertex and the points are the neighbors. So if you don't find the vertex, there is a chance you will choose wrong input values. All right. So you cannot bring any note cards to the exam. You have to memorize all the formulas. We will go to that point. Let's finish this graphing question. So the coordinates of vertex for this question are 1 and 0. Now let's go ahead and create a table. Once I find the coordinates of my vertex, I can create a table and put the vertex coordinates in the middle of my table. I know this looks like a overwhelming job, but it is a solid job, okay? If you do this way, you can make sure that it's taking less time. All right, so we have the neighbors as 0 and positive 2. I will go ahead and find the output for 0 first. So instead of x, I will simply put 0. So that just gives me 0, 0, -1. And if our mathematics is correct, we should also get the same point for 2. All right, let's go ahead and substitute y equals to, instead of x, let's put 2. And this gives us 2 times 2 minus 1. -4, positive 4 minus 1, which gives me again -1. So we need to be careful at this point. We should get the same reflecting point, which I just got. Now, after this, you have enough information. You do not need more points. The only thing you need to be careful about is what is your x. So your x is a negative number here. You can very clearly see, not x, sorry, a. Your a is a negative number here. Now, what's a? A is the coefficient of x. So ax squared plus bx plus c. If you compare, your a is a negative number. So if a is a negative number, which means a is less than 0, your graph opens upside down. Now I can start from the vertex points, which is 1, 0. So 1, 0, somewhere here. And then for 0, we have -1. For 2, we have -1. You can go ahead and connect the points. All right. So those were some graphing questions. I see more questions, more inquiries about the special product questions. Let's see if we can address some of them. In case you have any specific doubt on a concept, please let me know in the comment section. Okay, what do we have? All right. So there is a square root question. Sometimes it is one of the simplest concept and I see a lot of confusion with that. So I have a question here. We have to use the square root property to solve this question. Please remember the most important concept, the most important thing with the square root concept is, since you are working on an equation, when you find the square root, don't forget to put the plus minus sign. Okay, I see again a few doubts about finding the intercept. So, Ranav Gupta, you do not have to find the intercepts. You can just create a table. So all you need to do for graphing is find the vertex, use those vertex to create a table, by putting the vertex points in the middle of your table and choosing the neighbors. That's all you need to do. All right. Let's go ahead and do this square root question. So in the square root question, it is one of the simplest concepts, but where I see a lot of mistakes is forgetting this plus minus sign. Please don't forget this plus minus sign. Go ahead and find the square root. Since 15 is not a perfect square, you can just leave your answer as it is. On the left side, square and square root are opposite of each other. So if you find a square root of a square, you just get the number back, which will give us p plus 7 equals to plus minus square root of 15. What formulas will we need to use for certain graphs and equations? All right, I will address this question in a few minutes. You'll have to subtract 7 here, which will give you p equals to negative 7 plus minus square root of 15. And since you cannot further simplify square root of 15, you can just leave the answer like this, or you can also branch it out. You will not lose a point for forgetting to branch out, but the plus minus sign should be there. You should have 2 answers for the quadratic equation. You will not require to approximate the square roots on the exam unless the question asks you to approximate. So if there is no such word as approximate, you do not have to do it. All right, let's do this question. We have 9x squared minus 9x equals to 18. Please make sure you read the question carefully. Is the question asking you to use the complete the square method, or is it asking you to do it by quadratic method? So I can see we have completing the square. All right, that's one of everyone's favorite method. So I'll try to use a blank slide here because we definitely need some more space. All right, so I have 9x squared minus 9x equals to 18. But before I do this question, I want you to review all the steps. What are the steps to completing the square? So we want to solve this by completing the square. The first step is divide by a. Divide by a on both sides of the equation. And let's do this side by side. So if I divide this entire equation by the value of a, now what is a? A is the coefficient of x squared, which is 9 in this case. So we will go ahead and divide the entire equation by 9. So go ahead and divide this by 9, which gives us x squared minus x equals to 2. Now for your next step, make sure that your constant is on the other side of equals to sign. Now what is a constant? A constant is always just a number without the variable. So in this case, after dividing by 9, our constant is 2. Since 2 is already on the other side of equals to sign, we don't have to do anything else in this case. It has been done for us. What else after that? The third step is to add b over 2 squared on both sides. Add b over 2 squared on both sides. What is b? So let's write down the quadratic equation again in the standard form. b is the coefficient of x. You can see a is the coefficient of x squared and c is your constant. So what is my b value here? My b value here is 1. This is just 1. And yes, we are ignoring the sign of b. Yes, you will leave the answer as a square root of 15 in that other question. The zero product rule. Yes, we will use zero product rule in following questions. Let's practice. Let's finish this first. I add b over 2 squared on both sides. And I'll quickly go to zero product rule. The value of b is 1 here. So I'll just go ahead and add 1 over 2 squared on both sides. All right. At this point, you have the values of your a and b. And how a and b, remember, we are comparing this with the special product of a plus b squared, which is a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. So now you need to analyze and find what is that term which is being squared. So here you are converting x squared into x into x squared, and for the b, you have 1/2. So x is my a, 1/2 is my b. So I'll simply go ahead and take those values, which will give me x 1/2, and then you'll take the sign of the middle term. So x minus 1/2 is squared. All right, let me make some space. All right. All right, kids, don't rush. We'll go to the zero product rule in few minutes. Just let me finish this question and we will work on the zero product rule. We will do multiple questions on that. Let's just finish this. So we have x minus 1/2 squared equals to 2 plus 1/2 squared, which is 1/4. X minus 1/2 squared would be equals to, you have to now solve this. This will give you 9/4. And now go ahead and take the square root of both sides at this point. Don't forget the plus minus sign. That's the most common mistake. Don't forget the plus minus sign. All right, go ahead and solve this question. When you find the square root of 9 and 4, it gives you 3 and 2. Okay, completing the square is easy. I know some people are very smart. Completing the square is very easy for you. But trust me, that's the method that has worried me the most. So 9 over 4 is 9 and 4. Okay? All right, go ahead and add 1/2 on both sides. It gives us x equals to 1/2 plus minus 3 over 2. Some people are trailblazers. They just really think that completing the square is easy. All right, so now you will branch out your answers and you'll get a plus answer and a minus answer. Don't forget to find out both the answers. So this is 2, -1. All right. I have a question. If you have a graphing problem like y equals to -x squared, y equals to -x squared plus 6x minus 9, how do we do that? So you can either put x equals to 0, y equals to 0, find the intercept. Yes, that's one way. Or you can find the vertex using the formulas. You can find the vertices. So in this case, the vertex formula would be x equals to -b over 2a, -6 over -2 or +3. You will use this 3 to find the value of y. And then you will create a table using the neighbors. Or if you don't like this, then you can go ahead and find the intercepts using x equals to 0 and y equals to 0. -9, 18, -9. This gives you 3 and 0 as your vertex coordinates. And you will choose that 3 and 0, find the neighbors, find two outputs, and graph it. If we don't have to find the intercepts on the final, if it asks us to do right, yes, you don't have to worry about that part. Or if you really like to find the intercepts, then go ahead and do that. When do we put a question mark over the equal sign And when do we write plus minus versus plus and minus? Good question. You put the equals to sign when you check for something. So I don't think so you have a question in chapter 7 or chapter 10 where you are checking for something. But let's say if I give you x plus 2 equals to 5, then your x is 3. And now if you are checking for your work, then you will substitute x equals to 3. At this point, you put a question mark over the equals to sign. Until you reach a conclusion, you put a question mark. And plus minus versus plus and minus. So when you are working for completing the square or finding the answer using a square root property, when you take the square root on both sides, at that point, you have to put a plus minus in front of your square root sign because you have you could find two different values. So on the left side, your square root sign will cancel out the square. It will leave you with a square root of plus minus 15. And then you subtract 1/2 to get negative 1/2 plus minus the square root of 15. Now you can leave your answer like this, or you can take the LCM. All right, let's do a question on zero product rule. All right, let's see if we have a question on the zero product rule. And then we'll do some questions based on the binomials. So factoring the binomials. So I'm trying to find a question based on zero product rule. All right, let's solve this. Let's solve this equation. Now remember, when it just says solve, you can use any method. The first method that you can use is zero product rule. What is zero product rule? You should know by now. Zero product rule is when you will find the factors of this trinomial. And since those factors are multiplying to be equals to 0, you will take each factor, put it equals to 0, and then find the value of x. You will get two values of x. That's your zero product rule. What's the next method? The next method is completing the square. And then your third method is using the quadratic formula. So unless it is specified, you can use any method. So the next is completing the square. And the third one is using the quadratic formula. Please remember that in those two methods, method zero product rule and quadratic formula, you should have 0 on one side. Only then you can apply those rules or properties. In completing the square, you should have the constant on the other side of the equals sign. All right, let's go ahead and try to find the factors of this equation. 7x squared minus 13x minus 2 equals to 0. All right, how do we do that? Multiply your first and last term. So if I multiply 7 and negative 2, I get negative 14. And then since the product is negative, now this should be discussed again and again. Your product is negative. You can only get a negative product when you multiply a plus and a minus sign. If you multiply minus and minus, two negatives, it always gives you a positive product. And if you multiply two positives, it always gives you a positive product also. So in order to get a negative product, your factors should be of the opposite sign. One should be positive and the other one should be negative. All right. Let's go ahead, multiply the first and the last term, which gives us negative 14. Now let's find the factors of negative 14, and they should add up to the middle term here. What's our middle term? Negative 13. So negative 14, I always like to start from the first factor, which is 1, and the number itself. I know that 1 times negative 1 times 14 is negative 14. But when I add those two numbers, does it give me negative 13? So if I add those two numbers, it gives me positive 13. We do not need positive 13. So let's try with positive 1 and negative 14. If you add those two, it gives you negative 13. So let's go ahead with those two factors. 7x squared positive x minus 14x minus 2 equals to 0. All right, let's go ahead and group them. So this question also covers the grouping topic. All right, so when do you have to group? You can already see that instead of 3 terms now in a trinomial, we have 4 terms. All right, let's put first 2 terms in one group and last 2 terms in the second group. Now let's find the GCF of the first 2 terms. We can also rearrange our terms if that feels much easier and more senseful. The GCF of first 2 terms is, what is the GCF of the numbers here? You have 7, and then from the variables you have x. So you will get x minus 2. I will put x minus 2 again. And what should I multiply x with so I can get this term back? I can multiply it with plus 1. And let's put this equals to 0. So now I have x minus 2 and x minus 2 as a common factor. I will factor it out from the first term. From the first term, if you take away x minus 2, what is left? 7x. And from the second term, if you take away x minus 2, you are just left with 1. So now you have 2 factors. This is where your zero product rule will come. So those 2 factors, when you multiply them, they are equals to 0, right? When can something be 0? If I multiply a and b and it is equals to 0, then you can say that either a is 0 or b is 0 or both a and b could be equals to 0, right? Because if you want to get 0 as an answer, something has to be 0. So let's go ahead and put x minus 2 equals to 0. 7x plus 1 equals to 0, which gives you x equals to 2 and x equals to, go ahead and calculate this. It will give you negative 1 over 7. All right. I am accepting some more questions. If you guys have doubt on any specific concept, please let me know in the comment box. All right, let's do some binomial questions. So, special products. What are special products? Special products are when you can look at your polynomial and you do not have to worry about what are the factors. Should I use the quadratic formula? You just need to worry about which special product am I using. So let's take the first one. It is a binomial. What does a binomial means? It has 2 terms, only 2 terms. And you can see you have a square sign here. So the factors of a squared minus b squared are a plus a minus b. Then you have a cubed minus b cubed, which is a minus b, a squared plus ab plus b squared. All right, I'll take some more factoring trinomial questions. And yes, I can also explain the vertex form, graphing slope questions. When do you have to identify the exponential, quadratic, and linear functions? Yes, of course, we will discuss those questions as well. All right, we have a plus b, a squared minus ab plus b squared. And please see that you have a tell here, you have same sign, and then the opposite sign. And then again, you have same sign, and then the opposite sign. Please remember this last number, last term, b squared, doesn't change any sign. All right, let me take a question. Okay, who is getting a 0 in the finals? I don't think anyone is getting a 0 in the finals. Guys, stop exaggerating. You will be fine. All right, a squared plus b squared. If you see that, no real solution. No real solution. All right, let's take a question. We have, what do we have here? Let's say I have 27x cubed minus 125. 27x cubed minus 100 minus 125. Now, which formula should you use here? Which formula should you use here? So should you use a squared minus b squared or a cube minus b cube? Make sure you look at the exponents. This is 3, and I know that 27 is a cube of 3. So we have to use a cubic formula. 3x cubed minus 5 cubed. What is the formula of a cube minus b cubed? A minus b, a squared, ab, b squared. All right. Let's go ahead. What is the value of A? A is 3x. B is 5. So 3x minus 5. And this is where it gets really funny. Guys, don't forget the parentheses. Please. Don't forget them. I don't know how many times I have repeated this in this year. Don't forget them. A times B. 3x times 5. 3x times 5. And then the last term b is squared, which is just 5 squared, but I'll put parentheses because why not? 3x minus 5, 3x squared. 9x is squared, 15x plus 25. And no, you do not have to do anything after this point. This is factorized. This is done. This is factorized. This question is done. All right. Okay. Does anyone have a request to make, or should I just go ahead and choose questions of my choice? More factoring questions. So let's take another question. We have 2x squared minus 11x minus 63. Or not this one. Let me take another question. Let's take 36x squared minus 60xy plus 25y squared. All right, this question is, I like this question. So we can either, can you cover questions that need to be cubed formulas? All right, Elon Musk is x minus 10 equals to negative 16. Yes, let's do that. All right, let me go to the questions that have been requested first, and then I can do the questions of my choice. All right, if you have a question, please go ahead and ask me the question in the comment section. X times x minus 10 equals to negative 16. Cubed formulas. Yes, I think I just did a question on a cubed formula, but I'll do one more. X times x minus 10 equals to negative 16. Yes, we will discuss the cubed formulas. All right, so when you see a question like this, you can solve a quadratic equation any which way you like. But first you need to simplify it. How do you simplify it? Try to make one of the sides equals to 0. How would you do that? Go ahead, simplify, distribute this. It gives you x squared minus 10x equals to negative 16. Now at this point, you can either stop and do this by completing the square. You can solve this by completing the square. And why? Because the constant is on the right side already, which is required for completing the square. Or since I do not prefer that, I would go ahead and add my constant and bring it to the other side. So this will give me x squared minus 10x plus 16 equals to 0. All right, no one's watching Grey's Anatomy, guys. You guys are too young to watch Grey's Anatomy. Let's keep it to math questions. 1 times positive 16. Find the product of first and last term, which is 16. And we need to make 10. We need to find the factors of 16. Product is positive product, so we are looking the factors of the same sign. So 2 negative factors. All right, I'm going to wrap up this soon. So please send me questions. I will be doing a cubed question very soon. No, I am looking at all the comments, Bento, but Grey's Anatomy and Succession should not be discussed right now. The first factor is 1 and 16. I know 1 and 16 does not add up to give me 10. Let's move on. 2 and 5. No, 2 and 8. 2 and 8. 2 and 8 gives us 16 when multiplied. And when I add negative 2 and negative add, we get 8, we get negative 10. So negative 2x and negative 8x. And yes, next question would be from a cube. All right, we have all right, yes, next questions, cubed and vertex form. All right, cubed and vertex form. X minus 2, x minus 0. Now use the zero product rule. Zero product rule, which gives you x minus 2 equals to 0, x minus 8 equals to 0, which gives you x equals to 2 or x equals to 8. All right. Let me find a question for the vertex cube of a binomial. All right. A cube question. So yes, I see one cube question here. All right, let's do this. So we have xy cube minus 81 xy z squared. That doesn't look right. Let's take xy cubed. All right. All right, let's take a question. So let's take xy cubed minus 81 x to the power of 4. All right, first check please if you have a GCF that you should factor out. I can see that x is a common factor here. Then I will go ahead and factor out x, which will leave me with y cubed and 81. What is 81 a cube of? I don't think 81 is a cube. We have 8, 27, 64, 125. 81 is not a cube. So maybe we need to change the question. Let's make it 16 and 2. So now I have two common factors, which is 2 and x, and that would leave me with y cubed and 8x cubed. And now I can convert the term inside of the parentheses into a cubed form. What is y cubed a cube of? It is a cube of y. And what is 8 a cube of? 2. So this would be a cube of 2x. Could you do question like 82 and 83 on study guide, like identifying if it is exponential, linear, or quadratic? All right, yes, that's coming after the vertex form. This is your A and B. This is your A and that's your B. Go ahead and put this in the formula. What is the formula of A cube minus B cube? That is A minus B, A squared plus AB plus B squared. So we will get y minus 2x, y squared plus A times B, so 2xy plus B squared. All right. This is a question for the cube. Okay, so the next thing is vertex form. Vertex form. I'm going to write down few questions with the vertex form, and then I really hope we can understand how to do those questions. Y equals to x minus 2 squared. Y equals to 1/2 x squared plus 4. So the vertex form is finding the vertex. Once you find the vertex, I think you guys know what to do next, but how to find the vertex. So you are comparing this vertex with the formula y equals to ax minus h squared plus k. Please make sure, please remember that you are comparing this with something inside being subtracted from x and then being squared. So I can clearly see that in this case, we are not subtracting anything, and that's why we get x squared. And we are also not adding anything. So the value of your h and k in this case would be 0, 0. So your vertex are 0, 0. Look at the second question. Compare this with the h here. This negative is in the formula. All right, I really hope that we are being respectful here. Now, when we compare this, all right, when I compare this with the vertex form, I can see that the h value here is 2. So my h and k, my h is 2, but are we adding anything from the outside? No, the k value is 0. Number 3 question, there is no h because you are not. Let's rewrite this as x minus 0 squared plus 4. And if you compare this with x minus h squared plus k, you will get the vertex as 0, 4. Once you find out the vertex, you can put that vertex in the middle of your table. You can choose the neighboring points, put those values in the equation, and get your output. All right, so let's see, when we have been given a set of points, how do we make sure that if the graph is linear, or if the prediction is linear, if the prediction is exponential, or if the prediction is quadratic? Please remember, those data points are only for the scatter plot. And what does that mean? You will not get a accurate straight line. So what you will see is a trend. Let me draw some points here. So let's say I have a data. It is called the line of best fit. So let's say I have a data that I'm graphing. Let's say I am graphing something and I have this data. All right. Now you'll go ahead and then see that most of the points are covered in this line. If I draw a straight line, then most of the data points from my table would be covered. In this case, you will declare that the prediction is linear. But what about if you draw your scatter plots and they look like this? You can see that if you connect those dots, you can connect those points, they look slightly curved, but not curved enough to make a U. In that case, you can predict that the data is exponential. And in the end, for the last part, if you connect the dots and they look like they are making a small U, then you can predict that it is a quadratic function. All right. It is really difficult to put all the things together in one hour. All right, we are not taking any teacher's name. Please go ahead and delete your comment. I will not appreciate this. Please go ahead and delete that comment. That's not really respectful. Please go ahead and do that. All right, let's summarize this. All right, 7.1. You find out the G.C.F. When you have to find out the G.C.F., you just write the number. But when you have to factor out the G.C.F., then you write your G.C.F. outside of the parentheses and everything else inside. So read the question carefully, only number. Remember, whenever you factorize something, so this is 7.2 is factoring. Factoring how? Factoring by multiplying the first and last term and checking if it adds up to the middle term. So that's your factoring. But before you factor, always make sure that you factor out the G.C.F. Factor out the G.C.F. Always make sure. Otherwise, you will not get the correct answer. Then you have some more factoring. In 7.2, the value of A was 1. What does that mean? Your questions were like this: x squared plus 4x plus 6, or numbers like that. And then you had questions where you have the quadratic equation, but then the value of A was greater than 1, such as 2x squared plus 16x plus 5. Things like that. All right, moving on. You have a special products. The first one is A plus B squared The second one is a minus b squared. And how do you know where to use those formulas? The first and the last term will tell you the whole story. You will see that the first term would be a square, perfect square. The last term would also be a perfect square. And then your middle term can be written as the twice of a and b, such as in this case, it would be 12x. So that would be your TEL. You can check it by the first and last term. All right. The next one is binomial, the sum and the difference of product. Then you have trinomials. A minus b, a squared plus ab plus b squared. And then for the minus opposite one, if you have a cube plus b cube, then it would be a plus b, and the sign only changes for the middle term. Remember, a squared plus b squared does not have any solution. It will be no real solution. What's next? So we have the quadratic formula, our lovely quadratic formula. We didn't even get time to do any questions on this. Negative b plus minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Then you have the vertex form. The vertex form is ax minus h squared plus k. The vertex, other than the vertex form, you will have standard form ax squared plus bx plus c. And then in the standard form, to find the axis of symmetry or to find the x value, you use the vertex formula, which is x equals to negative b over 2a. All right, so I'm going to wrap up this live stream now. It was really difficult to work on all the concepts, but I hope this was a little bit helpful. All right, I will see you later with more math-related videos. Bye for now. Good night.